I wanted to ask Ryan about the URC Kids Round. So many of you might have seen that the URC has been activating themed rounds. We do two or three themed rounds throughout the season where we focus on a charity or a social cause, or something fun to attract different audiences to the games. And this weekend, round 16 is kids round, a kids takeover round. And Ryan, I know you've been sort of very involved in the planning, and you participated in our sort of hype video around that. And just to kickstart, I thought it might be quite nice if you tell us a little bit about our kids round and how exciting this weekend's going to be. Thank you. Over to you.
Yeah, well, there's a cool little video that's about to go out, I think this afternoon, where we involve one of my four children, trying to work with a 2-year-old. I mean, I thought I was hard work. Scout's definitely hard work to work with, but doing it with a 2-year-old was pretty difficult. But I'm covering the Edinburgh versus Zebra game this weekend, round 16, children's round. So they're going to involve kids all across the league. I think that we look back at the Origins round, which happened a few months ago now. It was a huge success across the URC. All the clubs got involved. There was different ways of doing it. Clubs, they wore their club socks, boys of their original clubs. So huge success in that. So hopefully this is just as good. And they've got all sorts of ideas with kids doing interviews. I know they've got some children reporters down in Edinburgh that are going to do some of the Q&As with the players and stuff. So exciting way to get the kids involved. And I know that Skulk's taking his boys down to the game, aren't you, Skulk?
Yeah, Ron, it's going to be absolutely chaos. So now imagine taking the boys with a 12, a 10, and an 8-year-old. The previous time when I went there, my boy thought, well, because he knew some of the players, he thought he can just run on and say hello to the guys straight afterwards. He being chased, and I'm like, oh my goodness, he's going to get tackled by one of the security guards. I'm like, just trying to stop everything. But the boys are super excited to go and watch the game. So, and it's a big one, So it's great.
And that's what we want. We want to create a little bit more carnage than normal's going on. So to have the kids involved, it's exciting, and they've got some really, really cool stuff ready for this weekend. So looking forward to it.
Thanks, guys. It certainly is going to be a fun weekend. Right, let's get over to getting some of the journos to ask their questions. So just a reminder, this will be immediate use. I don't see any hands, but if anybody would like to ask questions, please put up your hands. Right, I see. Let's go to Jan de Koning. Let's go to you first. And Jan, after you, we'll go to Michael Flismus. Thank you.
Thanks, Shelley. Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah,
Guys, I better put my video on so you guys can see I'm a real person.
that would be very kind. Thank you, Jan.
Scott, I want to ask, you're going to be at Loftus. But which team do you really support? I mean, you've been at a few South African teams.
It's quite weird. It's like loyalty goes loyalty goes both ways. So as long as it's a South African team playing against any other team, then of course I'm supporting the South African team. But I must say the last year of my rotation, I would say, from Lions to Stormers and to the Bulls at the end, that I never ever thought I would wear a Bull shirt because the rivalry between the Stormers and the Bulls. I never thought um, I would ever be playing for the Bulls. And currently, my three boys has got all Bull shirts on. So it's been quite. We're getting a lot of abuse here in Cape Town for being Bull supporters, but loyalty goes both ways.
Scott, easy solution. Wear the pink Bulls jersey and you'll be very comfortable because that's the most popular jersey in Cape Town.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would. Yeah, it's. I don't know if I wear Pink's bullshit in Pretoria, I might get a punch in the face. In Cape Town, it would fly.
Yeah. A serious question, Scott. Obviously, there's two big games. I know the Lions are still in there, but the Bulls and the Stormers are vital, and the Loftus game is so big. Um, I know that there's focus on the Champions Cup, but how big is this weekend for South African teams in terms of winning and staying in that top four spot, especially the Bulls?
Now, look, for me, it's quite amazing looking at the Bulls itself, the way they play. I mean, Leinster, when they played against Munster, I mean, I thought there's some things that happened in that particular game that I thought was on a nice edge, and they should have won that. against Munster. But then they come back last weekend and play, or the weekend before that, an unbelievable game. Now, the question going forward is now the Bulls are playing Glasgow this coming weekend at home, and it's at 2 o'clock. I think it's at 2 o'clock. It's kickoff, right? And that
Yes.
normally it is hot, even if it's winter. It can be quite with the humidity, the what's ligdruk? It's altitude. It makes it very hard to play the Bulls there. Then you've got Benetton next weekend, and then they go to the Sharks, and that's hopefully after the Sharks has qualified or won their championship, that they can go through. So I think they're betting their chances. With the Stormers that's playing abroad now, it's a bit harder. And going into these competitions, you want to play at home. That's basically it. Just a probability of winning is increases so much more.
Ryan, if I can ask last one from you. Obviously, from a Euro point of view, what has the introduction of the South African teams been, and which one has entertained you most?
Oh, I'll be honest, I love watching the Stormers. I think the threat of that back three they've got with some of the guys involved. Obviously, the Sharks haven't been anywhere near what anyone wanted them to be in the URC. Obviously, Challenge Cup's been a different story, and you can see where all their focus is going towards that Champions to the Challenge Cup, and they want to be pushing for Challenge Cup next year. We chatted to Andre Esterhuizen yesterday, and he's obviously rooting for the Sharks. He's off there, and Trevor Kanye, as we mentioned earlier, Scout, he's going there. So they'll be watching closely because if they can go and beat Gloucester in the Challenge Cup final on 25th, I think it is, of May at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, then they get a Champions Cup space. So Sharks have sort of underperformed in the URC, but got a real focus on Europe. But for me, watching the Stormers, they've been really exciting to watch. But they've been hit and miss again, and not travelled that well. Found it difficult to go on the road. And you mentioned it there. They've got 2 away games, Dragons and Connacht, and then a home game against Lions. So it's so exciting how tight. I think the top 4 will stay as it is in terms of those will be the top 4 teams at the end: Glasgow, Leinster, Munster, and Bulls. But there's so much movement in the bottom. Well, I think from 5th to 11th, there's just going to be such an amount of chopping and changing there, because a lot of those teams play each other. So it's exciting into the season. But no, Stormers for me have been pretty exciting.
Awesome, thanks, Chris. I really appreciate it.
Stop with it again. He's everywhere. Thank you, Stanford.
Someone's forgotten to mute.
Just one thing that things like normally maybe Ryan could give input into this. The one thing with South African teams that is maybe quite hard is because we've got a younger group of players normally within our squad, you will see performance fluctuating quite a bit. And not just performance, but it's with conditions as well, where your senior player or well-seasoned player can understand or go through those ups and downs, where I think South African teams are still finding their ways with this competition. I mean, it's interesting. I know the Bulls got a lot of grief for resting players when they played Northampton Saints, but the same with Leinster. They're pushing towards a final on the Investec Championship, but they rested some of their players coming into the South African leg of the tour, but that maybe will cost them a top spot. We don't know that. I think they're playing Connacht the last game round. Maybe if you can help me out here. They're playing Ulster as well, and they play another team. So it is tough playing both competitions for I think for South African sides and the other teams that's abroad. It's just depth. We lack sometimes depth.
Yeah, no, and that's it. You look at the teams like Leinster. I mean, they just lean on. They can go through that system of players. But you're right. Like they didn't get anywhere near as much heat for sending over a weakened team that got quite well beaten, didn't they? And then they got beaten again. So they've got one eye on Champions Cup. Good for Glasgow because we've got all our focus now in the URC. We want to make sure we take that top spot because we're talking about it. Home quarters, home semis, home final is exactly what you want to do. You look at the stats around it. If you get a home quarter, you're more than likely to come out of it in a better place, especially with the record for Glasgow at home. But yeah, Leinster. they've sort of taken their eye off the URC to focus on Champions Cup. But you said it
Yeah.
there, Ospreys, Ulster away, and Connacht. You feel like they should get enough out of those games to make sure they get second spot. But on the flip side, look at Munster.
Yeah.
They do it every year. They started out really
Yeah.
poorly, and they build towards the end of the season, and they're just starting to get going as well. Munster, they look dangerous.
Yeah.
Michael Vlismus, over to you.
Thanks so much. Hi, it's Skulk. Hi, Ryan. Thanks for the time. I just wanted to follow on from what Shelley brought up about the kids round, and I'm just really interested what rugby was like for you guys as kids. How did you sort of balance obvious talent and an obvious pathway in the game, but still balance performance and enjoyment of it while you were coming through? And how do you approach it now with your own sons and their love for the game and what they might want to achieve and follow in Dad's footsteps?
Go on, Scout.
Brian, you want to go? Must I go?
Oh, no, you Michael, go, because I know your boys play rugby and mine play football.
Yeah, well, funny enough, my boys play football as well. So it is, Michael, one thing I would say is it's great to see you got a haircut. You're looking good, man. But on a different note, from my perspective, is the kids are, I mean, we grew up probably different, myself and Ryan. He was playing mostly in the winter and I was playing in some sunshine. But the way we approached it was just by, my dad was always just have fun. And it's a religion in South Africa, like, you play from the age of 5, you want to play contacts. But only at 7, you play contact between your mates, you just tackle the living crap out of each other, right? And then as you go through the age groups, it's become quite a big thing. I was quite shocked. My boys, as I said previously, 12, 10, and 8, the seriousness of what school sports, not just sports, but rugby in particular, has moved towards in South Africa, how players are, how can I say, sourced, is probably the wrong, or contacted and sort of asked to move to different places. For me, it's just focusing for the kids on playing all kinds of sports, not just rugby. They play football in Stellenbosch, where it's seen as a rivalry. I see it as an unbelievable sport they loved. And they play all kinds of sports. So from my perspective, as boys just have fun, the probability, and I tried to explain it to a parent the other night, where within South Africa, around every father or mother or thinks their kid is going to be a Springbok. So I'd use the sort of the equation to analyze this. And Porus has got the most Springboks ever in South Africa, or not. It's like 65. If now I take it back from 1920s, how many kids has played rugby in Porus through all those years, for let's say 100 years, and there's only 56 or 64. I don't know what the number even is. But the probability is your kid is not going to play for Springbok. Yes, he might get paid or might not get paid, but the probability is just give the kid great memories, have fun. And, that's the biggest thing. That most 99.9% of all rugby players should just play it for fun and make memories with mates. And then if it gets more than that, fantastic. If not, all good.
Yeah, for me, you're right. It was playing in the winter. It was miserable, rainy, and we certainly wouldn't have been playing with no boots, which I hear you boys do over there. Till what age of 14? You play in bare feet?
Yep.
Which is amazing. I love that. I think that's awesome. But for me, mine started out at Farnham Rugby Club, and it was 5, 6 years old. But I think the main reason I ended up starting rugby because my old man loved drinking Guinness, so he knew the easiest place to go and do that was down the rugby club. So he would be set at the bar whilst I was out. And actually, my mum was the biggest driver of my rugby. She absolutely loved it. I've got 4 sisters, so I was the only hope at the time that was getting into the rugby. And do you know what? It's in terms of this kids round, it instills so much in you as a child. And I push my boys to do any sport they love doing. The only thing is time, trying to have enough time. I've got 2 boys and they play football, tennis, and Glasgow's a huge football city. It's football oriented. It was when I first came to Glasgow 15 years ago, and it's amazing to see where the club's gone and grown. It's got a recognition now, rugby in Glasgow, but football's still the dominant sport here. And so I think the boys they see the state of me when I was playing on a Monday morning. Dad, come on, come and do this, and I was like, oh, too sore, I'm too sore. So I think they thought, why would I do that to my body? But the
Yeah.
funny thing is, as soon as I gave up about 6 months ago, he's had a real interest in getting into playing. He said, "Oh, I think I want to start playing rugby," which I can't quite understand. I said, "Well, I've played for the last 15 years, and you never wanted to touch it, and now you're suddenly interested." So that's where my kids are going. They love it. They love going to the games. They absolutely loved going to Murrayfield when I played for Scotland.
Wow.
There was real special memories, but everything around a match day at Glasgow Warriors and throughout the URC and the leagues, they're really building. So that's why these weekends with the kids round are so special, to get as many kids
Yeah.
involved as possible.
Thanks so much, guys. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Michael, just one thing that I didn't think about when I was playing or having kids is every time the pressure, and that is, I think Ryan might experience this as well. Every time your kids play rugby, for example, there is a shadow hanging over them because they are Ryan's son or Skalk's son or Skalkberger. And so the one thing I'm very fearful of is he's living in his own shadow or my shadow or Ryan's shadow. And so from that perspective, I'm always trying to push the kid. And that's why I'm trying to focus on multiple sports. And for him, it's just getting the enjoyment factor right, because no one wants that pressure. And all three of them are playing fly off as well. So, I mean, and they are talented, but I mean, for me, they must just be their own kid and be a kid, be outside, enjoy the game, get smashed, laugh. That is the game. The game that myself and Ryan has played has given us so many memories. And funny enough, the things I remember is not the games itself, it's the people I've met, the times I went out with my teammates. I can't probably use this word, but the SHIT that we cause while on tours and stuff. That is the memories that is I will never forget. And that's what I'm trying to bottle for my son, is forget about the result. Play your heart out, be physical. You know, if a guy smashes you and it's so, you give him a thumbs up and say, I'm going to get you back. But don't forget the memory part. We're taking the competition too seriously. That's my feeling in school rugby.
Yeah, you're bang on there. And you mentioned your three boys are fly half, Skulk. Like, you wanted to be a fly half. The way you played, you were the one, you were the hooker that started sitting in the backfield waiting to carry the ball back. So don't even start pretending that you weren't wanting to be a fly half. That was you. That was you.
No, 100%. And I was standing in the backfield and I was wing. So I mean, I was actually I'm quite a weird chap as well. So now I put all those things together. It's just a crazy
A
game.
fly half that loves scrummaging. That is a weird thought. That is a weird thought. That's what you are.
And the reason was everybody thought because I did wrestling, I should be a hooker. I should be in the front. But I mean, yeah. Some friend of mine said, Scala, you are such a good rugby player, but you were such an average hooker.
Here's a headline for you. Over to Stephen Nell.
Thank you very much. Hi, Scala. Are you?
Stephen, it is unbelievable seeing you again, my friend. It's been years.
It has been. It was interesting to hear you say loyalty cuts both ways, because I was still hoping that you would play for the Stormers again, but we all know what happened. So,
yeah. Do you know the real story that happened there?
I do. I think it involved the WhatsApp. Eh?
Yes, I think you are one of the few players that knew I signed at the Stormers when coming back from Saracens, and things went pear-shaped. So nobody could understand why I ever went to the Bulls, because they were our arch enemy, the Bulls Stormers. And so I got told, after moving my family and my kids to South Africa from Saracens, coming out of retirement and all those kind of things, I was busy on a Springbok camp. We didn't have furniture in our house in Stellenbosch. And sorry to hijack the story, Stephen, and just telling. And then I got told, sorry, by text message, you are not welcome anymore at the Stormers. Find a new place. And, anyway, so on a better note, Stephen, what's
on
up?
a better note, I must say, I was going to just latch on to what Ryan said. I mean, you are the best outside centre that I've ever seen. But yeah, Schalk, with the Stormers, what's missing this year? Why haven't they hit their groove? Is it just a hangover from that awful tour what they have, or what's missing?
Sometimes it is. I mean, for me, it is in crucial moments. They're making mistakes. The way they play the game I watched against La Rochelle, for example, that was not URC, but there was so many opportunities, and that just comes with experience. And although in the beginning you've got a lot of talent getting you to finals or semi-finals and stuff, is sometimes just with more experience, the cooler heads, you start making better decisions with pressure. I don't know if Ryan can elaborate, but my feeling was always at Saracen, for example, back in the day, when we were a new team, and there is very serious or experienced players there. But a guy like France, he was injured, and you can see when there is more experienced players on the pitch, they tend to make better decisions. And with rugby, it's for me, it's about compounding pressure. And if you let someone out easily, then it's very hard to build that pressure up again. And so, yes, they had maybe injuries in one or two crucial positions, and some crucial kicks that didn't go over. But that's just how the cookie crumbles every now and then. For me, it's what Dobber has done is almost like with the Springboks is creating a bigger course than just winning a rugby match. It's like sort of making Cape Town great again and bringing happiness to Cape Town. And so from that perspective, the players are having a good time, and hopefully, that I would rather let them be average during the year and get to the final or the semi-final, win all those and win a trophy, than being great all year and not winning anything at the
end. The Bulls, I mean, how important is this weekend's game for them against Glasgow? Because obviously, if as you say, okay, Munster did well, on the road. They won the competition on the road. So it's not beyond the realms of possibility. But this coming weekend's game against Glasgow, how defining do you think that can be in the Bulls' campaign?
Which one's, Stefan? Stephen, which one?
The game the Bulls are playing this coming weekend.
Ryan, do you want to go first, and then I'll latch on?
Yeah, no, I think it's a huge game for the Bulls. I think they're probably favourites. I know that there's been chat. I was with the boys yesterday. They leave to head to the Bulls to head to Joburg today. Glasgow are flying out this afternoon, and there's a bit of chat around when they're playing in the heat, coming from Glasgow, which with 13 degrees is about hot as it's getting at the moment. They'll feel that the altitude. They'll feel that. So I think the Bulls probably have the upper hand there. But then you look at the games they've got after that. They've got Benetton, who have to travel over there, which I think, again, they've got 2 home games, which if they can get what they want out of those 2 games, they'll be pretty comfortable. And then there's an away game to the Sharks. So it'll be interesting to see where they finish. And you've got the Stormers that are sort of just underneath. They're 6 points away? Are they in touching distance? If the Bulls would have finished 4th, it'd almost be, Stormers would be desperate to finish 5th because they don't then have to travel overseas. They don't have to come over to Europe to play in a quarterfinal. They stay in South Africa. And as you said, it's a huge crunch match. So for me, it's a huge game. I think the Bulls have probably got home advantage and that weighs a lot, in what they've got. But they want to keep putting pressure on the likes of Munster and Leinster just above them. Glasgow pulled away a little bit. And it's equally huge game for Glasgow Warriors because, like we said, that top spot is huge.
Yeah. Well, from my perspective, it is with the pressure that Jake came under for sending a second string side across, right? So he basically said he doesn't think he's going to win he's going to focus in URC. And from that perspective, this is the big game, because even looking at the next couple of matches, the formies in, I know they had a hiccup against Munster, and then for now going forward, this building momentum, and I would say Jake is the kind of coach that likes momentum, getting momentum into the playoff games. And that's the same with Munster. Munster is a great side, and they are hitting their straps at the end of the season, but they've a lot more experience, I would say, with the pack. The pack that the Bulls had against, for example, Munster was a very young pack. Now some players is coming back. Ocker, Wilco's back. And for me, it's I like the way where the Bulls are sitting. They're playing. They've got great games that's ahead. This one is for them to lose. This one will be massive. So hopefully, putting as Ryan said, the top teams at the top under pressure. They want this. I reckon with Leinster, and I'm probably elaborating more. They're focused on a couple of different games as well, with the Investec Championship and going back to back on finals. Or big games, that makes it extremely hard. I know they've got a lot of depth, but that's hard.
Ryan, I just want to ask you, we've been talking about teams focusing on different competitions. I think the Bulls, obviously took a bit more heat than Leinster, but again, I suppose you could argue the Champions Cup is the elite comp. But just from a URC perspective, how interesting is the rivalry between South Africa and Ireland? And it's almost like there's a little bit of a thing happening in the URC, and it's potentially maybe trickling down from test level, that you see a bit of edge between and the Irish teams are coming, like Munster doing a job on the Stormers last year, and the Bulls, and this kind of rivalry that's now happening after a few years of URC. Do you think that could make, add something? Do you also sense that that's starting to happen and add something to the competition?
Yeah, definitely. I love it. I love the niggle that it brings, and it definitely stems down from international rugby. I mean, you hear of guys, I think it was Eben Etzebeth spoke on a podcast recently a few weeks ago, saying, when they played against Ireland, they said, "Oh, we'll sort of see you in the final" or something. I think was one of the things. And I said, "Well, hold on, focus on what what you've got coming next, which is the All Blacks." So there'll be a bit of niggle coming from that, but in terms of, and not to write Ulster and Connacht off, but in your Leinsters and your Munster, they've got such depth, such pedigree, and they're huge clubs, huge rugby clubs. So I think for the fact that Bulls and Stormers can go up against teams like that, which, like Leinster, are pretty much the pinnacle of club rugby at the moment, aren't they? Put them into any situation. You look at them at the weekend there against Northampton, absolutely dominated 60 minutes of the game. They're an incredible team, and it always comes down to playing the big teams. You do get a bit of niggle, but it's been nice to see, and that's what you want to build. You want to start to build that, bringing the South African teams in. I think it's been amazing for the league. Certainly as a player in it, playing the last 4 years, I think when the Cheetahs were in it and the Kings as well. When they they first introduced those to the URC, everyone here was so excited to be able to, as Scott mentioned earlier, being able to travel, being able to go on those tours, create those memories with the guys, to then play in a league where you've got 4 South African teams, you get the opportunity to travel and go away for 2 weeks. That's why I'm so gutted to watch the boys fly out today from Glasgow and think this is the first year where I'll not be able to get a seat on the plane. I was trying. I did try my best. I said, "Listen, you should probably take me just for team morale." But that's what it's all about, having those teams in there. But I think the niggle that's been created between those teams, everyone's got it against Leinster and Munster. Let's face it. When they come, there's always that bit of niggle.
Right. I think I'm going to hand the microphone to Heinz Schenk.
Hi, gents. Hope you're well. I actually have a joint question for you two guys, if you don't mind. You touched on this thorny issue of focusing on 2 competitions, and there's a bit of a narrative developing, that it might become actually like European football, where it becomes increasingly more difficult to actually achieve a continental and a, almost want to say, league double. And Ryan, you've experienced it, as a player yourself. I mean, you guys were in contention last season with the URC, and then basically ran out of steam in the knockouts. But at least you guys went on to win the Challenge Cup and stuff. But it just seems that it's just so difficult actually to actually, like, really. We've even seen it with Leinster now. I was just wondering, from your perspective and your own experiences as a Glasgow player, from a team that's challenged on both fronts consistently, are we actually going to see doubles, in future, or do you perhaps think, that structurally it's just so difficult to actually achieve that type of pinnacle, I almost want to say?
No, well, personally, I love it. We made it to the final, Heinz. You rubbed it in there. We didn't win the Challenge Cup. That was how, but it's I think it's brilliant. I think it's great to have two competitions, because sometimes you need to freshen things up as well. And when a different competition comes in and there's a break, certain teams get rest, but some teams have to then go and prepare for another huge tournament. So it deepens the squad. It gives more opportunity to players as well. If you did narrow it down to one competition, you'd probably end up with the same 23 to 30 players playing every single week. Whereas you want to try and grow these squads, get as many players out there as possible. So it's offering a lot more opportunity. And you see that with Leinster. I know that they haven't performed as well. But when they then get to blood a lot of youngsters in a huge competition like the URC, it can only be good for the teams. And I mean, across Glasgow, we used to have, I think it was roughly 52 to 55 players used in a season, which is amazing, which is huge. And that's where you see what teams are the strongest, because they can't just lean on their 23 to 30 players. They need to build a squad outside of that. And then you add into that, 15 internationals going away for a Scotland duty with Glasgow Warriors, but they're still managing to compete at the top level of the league. Look how many players we lost to the Six Nations this year. I think there was between 13 and 16 players missing a lot of the season. I know there was only a couple games played in that, but I think it's good. I think it's good for rugby. It's good for the squads. It's good for growing the game. So I don't mind. I don't mind fighting on two fronts. It's exciting. I don't know about you, Scully. You were involved in some big finals and European Cups with Sarries, etc.
Yeah, I actually wanted to ask, Schalk. I mean, you actually experienced the rare, double, actually, Schalk, as a Saracens player. I think it was 2015, 2016. But you also experienced, the days where it was either Premiership or Champions Trophy or Champions Cup. I just want to hear from your perspective. You experienced that sort of like past years of the challenge there, but you're also pretty well versed about salary caps here in South Africa and the threat always of losing players to the foreign market. Just how do you feel South African teams are coping with the challenge? Do you think there might need to be more investment? Is it just about persevering with the youth guys that are being empowered in our systems?
Okay, two parts of that sort of question. Our first one, it is terrible we lost against Toulon and against Northampton in both finals, right? So that was horrendous. I think it was 2014. We've done both twice, but that was luck, not luck. We needed a lot of luck on our side. It is extremely hard to do both because they've changed. They need to change the scheduling. I don't have the answer to it, but it is very tough on any squad to have depth. Yes, you can compete on one, but normally to compete on both is very hard. Then secondly, with regards to South African teams, we've done pretty well in the URC. And I know within the Investec Champions League, or Champions Cup, we've done actually all right, but it becomes to start competing on one is great, and then starting to compete on both is very, very, very difficult because, as I previously said to Ron, we lack experience and we lack depth. If we've got certain injuries in key positions, we struggle. But what it does benefit is international rugby. So yes, our Stormers, our Bulls, the Sharks, although they've got a great side, and the Lions, that's one way of getting a lot of exposure to at a very high level to a lot of players within the South African ranks. And then we've got a lot of internationals, guys that won the World Cup in 1923. They go play abroad. What they do then extremely well is build IP from different coaches, different teams, and different parts of the world that they all bring back eventually when they sit together and say, okay, what have we learned in France? What have we learned in Ireland, Scotland, Italy, all over Japan? And then we've got this experience of young players that's come through that's played beautiful rugby. They're not there yet, but they've got exposure on a very high level. So currently, fantastic for Springbok Rugby because we are definitely the move away from Australia and New Zealand to this part of the world has benefited our rugby immensely.
And then just lastly for Ryan, Franco Smith came to Glasgow. Actually, in your last season, you actually played under him, and he's been very successful. I was just wondering from a local perspective, Ryan, just how have you experienced him? How has his profile grown in Scotland? Because this is also a guy who actually told me he went to Scotland and made a point of not trying to familiarize himself with anything. You know, he didn't bring trusted assistants and he didn't even actually bring in preferred players. I think Henko Venter is like the only one this season. So he really tried to immerse him in this new challenge and this new Scottish culture. And I was just wondering, how has he been received, you know, in Scottish rugby?
He's been received really well, especially with the guys. He's all about hard work. He's got a plan. He talks about the plan all the time. He'll be planning for something next year already, and he works it back. And he's a very detailed coach. But I mean, when you get down to it, and actually when you've trained under him, it gets pretty simple. It's listen, you just need to be fitter. You need to get up and down off the ground as many times as you do in training. You need to do that ready for a game. So he works the boys really hard, but he's also got trust in the boys. So he's been brilliant. He obviously came in from a Italian background where he put a lot of the foundations in place for Italian rugby. And you just look at the under-20s there, for example, and how well they're going, and then the Italian national team having one of the most successful Six Nations ever. That's a product of what he's been putting in place. And there's a lot of talk around Scotland at the moment in terms of grassroots and how we're developing the younger generation. And I think that the SRU will be leaning on someone like Franco Smith, who's done such a good job with Italian rugby, to come in and do the same. Obviously, his sole focus at the moment is Glasgow Warriors, but I know that there's more than that. It's the SRU looking at him in terms of how they can use him for the whole of the nation. So he's been received really well. The best thing he did was got rid of the Deadwood, very early on. But it's quite interesting. We've got a good relationship now, myself and Franco. I actually played golf with him last week, so he needs to work on his golf, definitely. But he's a good man, and yeah, you can see he's doing great things with the club and with the team at the moment. And also, like you said, he came in and inherited a squad, inherited the coaches, and the fact that he's managed to sort of gel everyone together and also blood a lot of youngsters. There's a lot of young guys that are getting opportunities. And what I think is probably the most important thing I saw was there was guys last season under Danny Wilson that did not get a look in. For example, Tom Jordan, who's been the standout 10 for Glasgow Warriors and has come on leaps and bounds and been incredible, a huge integral part of Glasgow. And then Stafford McDowell, he's played every single minute of the URC and he didn't get a game under Danny Wilson. So he came in and saw things in players that maybe other coaches didn't, and tapped into that. And then he then gives it all to the players. So there's a lot of player control as well, which is great to see.
Thank you very much, James.
Right. I'll over to you.
Thanks, Shelly. How are you guys?
Good,
Very good, thank you.
Ryan, just to start off with you, and just to latch on Heinz's question around Franco Smith, just how have you found seeing Duman Jersey? He's been at the Glasgow for some time now. How has he sort of been within the dressing room? And we've also seen him contribute immensely on the field this season.
Yeah, he's come in and done well. That's a player. I think Danny Wilson actually brought him in. I remember being over at a game where he came to sort of do his medicals into, but he's been really unfortunate with injury. He's had a few big injuries this season, which has kept him out for a while. But Glasgow are blessed with some really good locks in the likes of Richie Gray, Scott Cummins. Then there's some young guys in Alex Samuel, Max Williamson. So there's a lot of competition there, but he's done really well. And I guess what lends it to him is Franco loves the 6-2 split. He's not quite gone full South African yet with the 7-1 that you guys love. Just around the corner, I'm sure. But he loves the 6-2 split. So it's really, he likes to have two locks on the bench, and that's where Sintu's come in and done really well. So no, he's fitted in well, and he's been a good character around the club.
I mean, just from your perspective, Ryan, how is sort of the URC with the South African teams also coming along? How has it sort of helped the Scotland national team to sort of grow and, you know, be competitive within those top tier teams? How has it sort of helped you guys' growth within international rugby?
This is a tough question because look at Scotland. We should have definitely done better. We should have definitely done better in the Six Nations. I think there was a lot of disappointment after that. But I think the fact that you're getting to play against, you know, when you go up against the Sharks and you're coming up against that amount of Springboks, that amount of World Cup winners in a team, more so probably for guys that are sort of knocking on the Scotland door, the likes of Stafford McDowell. You know, they're talking about Tom Jordan a second ago. He becomes Scottish qualified in the autumn, actually. So for these young guys to go up against players like that and blood themselves, to go over to one of the toughest places you can play against the Bulls in Pretoria, you know, it's such a difficult place to go and play. But as a youngster, going over there and experiencing that only gives you that, you know, that added extra when you then go into your national camp. So it's been brilliant to play against some of the best players in the world. I mean, I love looking and watching Damien Willemster. I just think the man has just no fear of trying everything. And it's not outrageous. It is outrageous, but it comes off. And I love watching him. And to get to play against players such as him, the Aronses of the world, with the South African teams coming in, it's been great. So only positive things, I think, for the national teams, and that's where the young guys can learn.
And you're playing good weather as well every now and then.
Good weather and good food as well. Getting down there and getting some steak on board. It's that's the one thing I will miss the most, is being able to travel down. And we mentioned it, didn't we, when we spoke about Stellenbosch, one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. And let's not forget about the vineyards as well. I mean, we missed the vineyard. I missed the vineyards as well, but they won't be doing that this time. They're over there for business. 2 weeks of business.
Scott, just to touch base, you mentioned the rivalry that's brewing between South Africa and Ireland from the URC. There's the incoming series with Ireland coming on board. How big is that series within this rivalry? Do you know, to sort of take it up a level or a notch up a level?
Look, I mean, I've played under both coaches now, national coaches, you know, with Andy Farrell and with Rassie Erasmus. And it's very interesting to see the way they approach things. Like Rassie was giving Andy compliments, Andy was giving the Springboks compliments. But I do know, always when we played New Zealand back in the Super Rugby times, this is now way back, when we have a good momentum against the Blues, the Chiefs, or the Crusaders, then we sort of build sort of confidence that we've beaten them during the season. And then when we play them in the Tri Nation, there is definitely, if you get smashed by them, it's sort of a bit of a confidence thing. You have to have a really great coach. And I mean, I think John Smith spoke about it when he was captain. And so definitely this rivalry between Ireland and South Africa, there is a bit of that. The only difference I would say is, if you look at Munster, you've got a couple of South Africans playing for them. We've got Leinster, you've got a couple of South Africans playing. South Africans are sort of spread across the league, right? And you can't blame them because it is a profession. But when it was New Zealand and South Africa, there wasn't a lot of South Africans playing there. But so from both sides, it's going to be an unbelievable clash. And once again, I don't know if guys watch this, although it is very important for Rassie to be successful in the against Ireland, his focus is building depth for the next World Cup. And so I know South Africans hate it when we've done pre-World Cup. I've said, look, Rassie's words were, would you rather be ranked second, third, fourth, or second and win a couple, but you grow depth and win World Cups, or do you want to be ranked first during the World Cups and not win anything at World Cups. So that is, I'm taking away the rivalry between the Ireland and the Springboks, but that is his focus is a bit different and more focused around team. But one thing I want to ask Ryan is that I never knew or still don't know is within Scotland. Look, I like the way you guys play, or your old team, or still supporting the team. But is it from a Scottish way of coaching? Does Franco have to play certain things that Townsend wants to play, Gregory wants to play, or is it totally mixed, or can he have his own sort of way of playing and coaching?
No. I think he gets to add whatever way he wants to play. But you look at the players and the way it's so player led and that's the same way. Gregor Townsend, remember, was coach of Glasgow in 2015 when we won the league. He sort of put in a blueprint of how Glasgow played, and then that's how everyone wants to see them play. They want to see running rugby. Okay. Oh, sorry, the thumbs up came. But with Franco Smith, I think sometimes he looks at it in the way that Scotland train. That's where you maybe get a little bit of friction because he wants the boys to train a certain way. International rugby, Scully, is completely different. You have to train completely differently because obviously there's such intense matches. So that's the only thing. I think there's a bit of that. But in terms of that, no, that will all be down to he gets to choose the way that Glasgow want to play. And as you can see, that's all out attacking rugby. When you've got the likes of Sione Tuipulotu and Hugh Jones, that are the centre partnership for Scotland, he'll sort of lean on them and go, listen, how's the attack look? How's this going to work? And most of the time they're like, well, this is how we do it with Scotland, and maybe tweak a few bits here and there. But the likes of Pete Horne, who played at Glasgow Warriors, is now involved in the Scotland setup, but also involved in the Glasgow setup. So there's a lot of synergy there, a lot of crossover.
Yeah. Right, so I'm very conscious of time, and Graham, a person, Ken Borland, I see that you have had your hands up for a while. I just want to check, are you happy to continue with immediate use, or Graham, Ken, do we move into under embargo until tomorrow morning? Graham?
Yeah, that's fine with me.
You want to go, you're happy for under embargo until tomorrow morning?
Sure, that's fine, yeah.
Okay, perfect. Ken, you also happy with that?
Yeah, fine with me. No worries.
Okay. Graham, we'll go to you first and then to Ken, and then I don't see any other hands, and we'll move into the Sunday papers. Over to you, Graham.
Thanks a lot. Hi, I've got a couple of questions for Ryan. Ryan, how are you?
Good, thank you. Good yourself?
Good. I just wanted good, thank you. I just wanted to kind of go back to something you said earlier about Glasgow and how it's such a football obsessed city, and how tough is that for rugby in general and the Warriors specifically, do you think, to try and make an impact there? Because as you said, it's all about Celtic and Rangers, isn't it? It is hard for rugby to kind of get a foothold in that market.
Yeah, it is. But like I said, it's grown. I turned up 15 years ago and someone said, oh, big man, what you did here? And I said, play for Glasgow Warriors. He said, what's that? And I said, it's a rugby team. And he went, yeah, we've got a rugby team. He couldn't believe it. It was just like, you're joking. And obviously we've sort of put it on the map as we built with Sean Lanine. But it is difficult. It is. But there's such a divide between the football with Rangers and Celtic. Obviously there's other clubs. But there's such a divide with those two teams. There's a lot of people leaning into rugby now because, especially game day, match day, the experience that you can get in the URC coming down to Scotstoun, a lot of families love it, and there's not that that conflict, I suppose, that you would get. But I think Glasgow Warriors have done well to put rugby on the map in Glasgow. I think it's grown so much, and even in the last 2-3 years. It helps when the team are winning. It helps when they're making it to quarterfinals in Europe and make the finals and Challenge Cups, and then pushing top of the league. It all helps. So I think the next step is looking how they develop Scotstoun and grow it that way. And then when the Scotland national team have so many superstars and there's a big focus on that, then it helps as well. So no, it has been difficult, but definitely getting bigger. Definitely getting bigger.
A kind of follow-up question to that is, can Glasgow go all the way this season? And do you think that could maybe make a big difference in getting folk who aren't traditional rugby fans more interested?
Yeah, I think we saw an influx of fans after that the win in 2015 over in Belfast. I think there was a lot of people that sort of jumped on board and went, okay, let's go and have a look at this. And I guess we spoke about it in terms of the Origin stuff and the children's round this weekend. It's a big push across the URC to try and get more kids involved. ultimately where you're going to grow the game is at the grassroots level. And with Scottish Rugby, they're doing everything they can to try and grow that. So that's really important. But I think that Glasgow can go the whole way. I think if they can just hang on to that top spot, they're so dangerous at home. And then there's talk of a quarter-final here at Scotstoun, which, you know, is pretty much, I can't do the maths straight away, but I think they're guaranteed a quarter-final. They got a Zebra at home last game, which you expect to get points out of. So they're looking at a quarter-final at home at least, which then leads them into a semi-final. And then the chat of hosting the final at Murrayfield, obviously. So having all the home advantage is massive. That's what we want to try and push for. But I think with this squad they've got, with the way they're building nicely, and with that threat, that weapon of that maul that they've got, which has got Johnny Matthews. Scott, what about this, by the way? Have you seen the 3 top try scorers in the URC? Three hookers.
100%. That's how it should be. And I bet you they're all going, it was me, it was me, it was me.
Yeah, but they're just hanging off the back. They weren't like you. They weren't 80-meter tries. It's Johnny Matthews hanging off the back of mauls. But Glasgow, with that weapon and that threat, and the way that they're building, if they can go over South Africa, get a couple, get some points out of over there, maybe one win and a win at the end of the season, they're sitting pretty comfortable. But yeah, you've just got to look at how the other teams are sort of faring. The Munsters, we got to a quarter final against Munster last year, didn't we? And hadn't lost at home all season. And it's knockout rugby. And exactly like Scala said, some of these teams, the Stormers, etc., we talk about their form, but once it gets to knockout rugby, then it's one game at a time and anything can happen.
Thanks, guys. Sorry, what I don't like, Ryan, is it shouldn't be the hookers that score the tries from a mauling. For me, I like scrumming, I like mauling, but they shouldn't be the top try scorers. And so for me, it's so hard to, when a line-out maul is set, sorry to get too technical, it's so hard to stop it because the guys at the back is moving at the back. You've got 5 guys and 7 guys in front of him that's rotating the whole time. And it's so hard to stop a great maul.
Yeah.
When it's set.
I know, and that's it. They talk about discipline, but yeah, they should give it to the blokes at the front that are doing all the hard work. That was me back in the day. Right in the middle of it.
Right, thanks, guys.
Cheers, man.
Ken, over to you.
Don't forget me, Shelley.
I won't forget you, Derek. Don't worry.
How's it, Schalk? How's it, Ryan? Sorry, I can't seem to turn on my video.
That's okay.
Just probably for the public benefit, but just for one question for each of you. Schalk, Munster coming to Loftus Versod and beating the Bulls and then beating the Lions. Do you feel that they've kind of shown the way in terms of winning games on the high felt, and especially at Loftus Versod? Do you think they've opened up a bit of a chink in the Bulls' home fortress there?
No, I actually, if I wasn't in the change rooms, I can't give a comment, but I would say, look, it was quite a tight game going into it. There were 2 great sides matched. Unfortunately, the card made it very, very difficult for the Bulls then to play with 40 men, and sort of that's just a great Munster side going that way and beating the Lions after the Lions has beaten a substandard Leinster side because they've rotated quite a bit. Munster is on form. They are experienced group. I mean, with RG there or their lock combination, I mean, they just play a very good brand of rugby. I still think when the Bulls are playing on form and they've got all their players, remember in that particular game, the pack was extremely young for the Bulls. When they're going to play, hopefully everyone's going to be back in the quarterfinals, semifinals, and final. Then it's going to be a different outfit playing the Bulls at home, full stadium. It's going to be a different kettle of fish, I would say.
Thanks, Schalk. And Ryan, just for you mentioned Glasgow Warriors favouring sort of all-out attack. Munster, as Schalk said, is obviously a great side. So, there's no underestimating what they did. Do you feel, though, that Munster, when they won against the Bulls and especially against the Lions, it's almost as if they favour not playing that much rugby, that they were happy to not have the majority of territory or possession, obviously defended really well and just capitalised on opposition mistakes created through pressure. Do you think Glasgow can do that, given their sort of attacking focus? Although obviously you mentioned the Mauls, that will come into it as well.
Yeah, I don't think they'll change the way they want to play. I think they'll go over there and stick to the blueprint as such. It's not like Franco Smith to go over and completely change something for the team. I've been involved in teams where you make it to quarterfinals and suddenly you change the game plan. You've got there with a certain way that you play, and then you change something right at the last moment to try and suit something. It doesn't make sense. We did it against Saracens in the quarterfinal and got our pants pulled down. So I don't think he'll be going over there changing it up. Actually, Glasgow Warriors, everyone talks about their attack and how dangerous it is because it goes from anywhere. And they talk about the Maul because they put pressure on teams, wait for them to make mistakes, and then put it in the corner. And Franco Smith does not want them going for 3 points. He wants to be going to the corner, making sure he's putting pressure on them. It'll be interesting at the latter stages of the game to see when they do start taking 3 points, because he knows how important all these bonus points are. And you look at the league at the moment from 1st to 11th. I mean, it's so tight. There are all those little bonus points in the season now where Glasgow, I think they've only missed out on 1 or 2 try bonus, which is incredible. So that's why they're sat with 4 extra points at the top of the league. But for me, I think people forget to talk about the defence. They actually top the charts in defence as well in the URC. They make the least missed tackles. They're not that dominant, but they've got a style where they just let teams come at them and they find a way to choke tackle, 2-man tackle, and turn them into mauls. So they've got a certain style of defence. They haven't let a try, and they didn't let a try in last week, the last game they played, and they pride themselves on that. So actually, for all the chat around their attack, their defence is pretty good as well. So they'll be confident in the way they want to play, and they'll go over there and won't change too much, I don't think.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ken. Derek, are your questions still for publishing for tomorrow, yeah?
For tomorrow. I'll be really quick because I see you're running out of time.
That's okay.
Ryan, the Irish international team have won 14 of the last 15 teams against Scotland. Tell me a reason why Glasgow would beat Leinster in a final. It's Scotland against Ireland.
That's a very, very good question. Very good question. Why haven't Leinster won the last 2 finals of the European Cup that they've been in? The way that they build towards
by a bigger pack.
Big pardon?
We're beaten by bigger packs.
Well, there you have it. Maybe Glasgow have just got to make sure they put out the biggest pack possible when they come up against Leinster. I think home advantage would help Glasgow, certainly, to have it at home. We obviously had that game against them when Dave Rennie was here at Celtic Park, where we got to
2019, you lost.
2019, yeah, where Leinster came over and did a job on us there. But listen, as I said earlier, it's anyone's game. When you get to knockout rugby and strange things can happen. Whether I think it's a strange thing, I don't know. I think Glasgow they've beaten Leinster first game of the season this year. I know that it was probably a more inexperienced squad that they had. They had a few academy boys in terms of the scrum, but Glasgow beat Leinster right at the beginning of the season, so it would be quite fitting and telling for them to do it right at the end of the season as well, Derek.
Right, last one from me, and this will nail it to you. Do you know something we don't, that Murrayfield is the final, and why on earth would Glasgow play a match at Celtic Park in 2019 when they knew that would only encourage 30,000 Irish fans to turn up? Would you play it at Ibrox this time, would you?
Ibrox isn't an option. I think the amount it cost, because they had the Commonwealth Games in Ibrox, but the pitch is too small, so they had to pay 120 grand to extend the pitch. So that would be the reason you wouldn't be able to have it at Ibrox. Celtic Park, I actually don't think is an option either. I think it was in terms of how much it would cost. The reason they wanted it at Celtic Park back in 2019 was because we wanted it in Glasgow. We wanted to make it a Glasgow affair. We didn't. When you go down the M8, it turns into Edinburgh. It's more of a Scotland thing. So we were really keen to make sure we kept it as a Glasgow affair, and that's why we had it at Celtic Park. So Yeah, in Murrayfield this time round, I think, because I think just in terms of how much it would cost to have it anywhere else is a huge expense, I believe.
Where's Hampden Park?
Hampden is unavailable. I think there's a concert on there in Glasgow.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thanks. That's very well answered. Good, great answer. Thanks a lot.
No worries.